Hi, I'm Mark Gaylor for markgaylor.com. In this tutorial I want to look at making a double exposure composite image. This is the finished version which we have here, which is a young woman's profile head, and we have these roots growing down from that face. Okay, so let's take a look at the two main images and how I prepared them. I'm currently in Lightroom, although the compositing will actually take place in Photoshop CC. If you're not using Lightroom, you could do this in Adobe Camera Raw. Okay, the first thing, we've got a near silhouette here, and I've created this by asking the young woman to lean backwards in front of a window, and so we get that nice white background without having to use a studio. Now, I've done a little bit of editing in order to make this even more graphic than it already is. If I just take this into the Develop module, you'll see that I've just removed some of the vibrance and added some clarity. The lower portion of the image, however, goes very dark because of a graduated filter that I have here that is lowering the shadow values to -100. Anywhere that we have a very dark shape, such as a silhouette, the new or second image is going to be able to populate that area. Okay, so that's really the secret, is to create a very graphic image with large amounts of white and black in the image. Okay, let's take a look at the second image I'm going to be using as my texture or graphic. Okay, now I've got this picture of winter trees, and but it's not quite graphic enough. So I've done quite a lot of editing on this one in order to make it almost black and white with very few shades of grey in the middle. And that sky is completely white again. Okay, so a little bit more work on this one, but just basically start with increasing contrast and rendering light areas white and dark areas black. Okay, I'll come over to grid view and just select those two edited image here, and I'll just right click and choose Edit in, Open as Layers in Photoshop. Now again, if you're using Adobe Camera Raw, you can just open both images, and when you're inside of Photoshop you can just go to the File, Scripts, Load Files into Stack, or you can use the other techniques that you might be aware of, such as dragging one image on top of another. Okay, the two images have been processed from their raw files, and sometimes the order with this workflow doesn't actually make a difference, but I am actually going to push the trees to the top of the layer stack there. And before we do any masking, because most of the masking for this project is going to be done by blend modes. Now, if we choose the screen blend mode, it's going to prioritize white. Okay, and as you can see, any areas that were white on the lower layer will automatically mask the tops of these trees here, and you can see the trees populating those very dark areas of that silhouette. Now, I don't want the trees growing up, I want them to behave as if they're roots. So I'm just going to right click on this top layer and choose Convert to Smart Object. This will make sure that if I rescale the image multiple times, I'm not going to lose too much quality. I'm now going to go into Free Transform on a Mac, that's Command T, Control T on a PC. And I'm just going to right click and choose Flip Vertical. Okay, and this is exactly what I wanted. I can actually move this into better position before I hit the commit icon here at the top of the window. Okay, now we just have a little bit of a black line around here, and we got some elements of the shirt that the woman is wearing that I actually don't want in the composition. So with these projects, I always like to start with a base layer that is either white or black. So I've just selected the bottom layer there, and I'm just going to hold down the Command key on a Mac, Control key on a PC, and click on the new layer icon. And this forces the layer to go below the active layer rather than above. We can now fill this layer with either white or black. I'm going to choose white. We can come up to the menu items. I actually know a keyboard shortcut for filling with the background color. I have to make sure that white is the background color, so I'm just going to press D on the keyboard in order to get those default colors. Then I'm going to hold down the Command key on a Mac, Control key on a PC, and then just hit the Delete or Backspace key in order to fill this base layer with white. Okay, so what I'm going to do is now select that layer just above, that's the one with the portrait on, and just add a layer mask. Okay, now an empty layer mask. We're not going to be doing any very accurate masking here. We're just simply going to mask with a large soft brush. So select the brush tool. We have black as the foreground color. I'm going to set the brush hardness to 0, and then I'm just going to come into this area and hide some areas of that shirt. You can set the opacity to 100% just to do this in one pass, or select it as a slightly lower opacity and do several brush strokes over the same area. Okay, so that's really got the sort of the framing or view that I actually want. Okay, now if you've got a little bit too much detail in the areas where we have a little bit of skin here, such as perhaps on that cheek, we can add another layer mask onto that tree layer there. Click on the Add Layer Mask icon. This time I will lower the opacity down to maybe 60 or 70%, and then just brush to restore some more of that skin detail up at the top of the frame there. Okay, maybe just a little bit coming down the neck as well into that single pass. Okay, so I'm really happy with the blend here now, but I want to move both of these layers at the same time. It just needs to be a little bit centered. So I'm just going to hold down the Shift key and select this second layer. I'll just bring that out so you can actually see a little bit more of the work that's going on here. Okay, so with both those layers selected, I'm going to select the Move tool, and then both of the layers will move in unison together, and I'm just going to create a central composition for this design. Okay, so once we've got that, we're going to sort of add a texture overlay. Now, if you don't have any of your own textures, one of the things that you can come over to is Adobe Stock Library, and you can search for textures here that you might want to use. Now, I've actually got some of my own textures, and some that I've also purchased from Adobe Stock. Okay, one of the ones that I have purchased from Adobe Stock is this grunge concrete texture. Some of these paper textures are actually my own textures that I've added to my personal stock library. In order to add a layer or a frame or a design to the stock or your personal libraries, just simply drag the layer into the libraries, and then that will be uploaded to your Creative Cloud account. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to, this little tick shows that I've actually purchased this stock library, this stock image from Adobe Stock, but I'm just going to drag that in to the image, and this will allow me to put this on top. If you see this image goes in between the two layers that you've got active, just remember anything that you add to this composition will always go above the active layer. So if it's got sandwich between the two layers, let's see if I can just do that. Let's just commit this for a minute. We'll just drag that in between the two layers. Okay, so if you end up with that sort of scenario, you just want to put that texture on the top of the composition. Just drag it there. Now this has got a little cloud icon instead of a smart object icon because we've dragged it down from the cloud. It's also a non-destructive way of editing with this composition. It behaves exactly like a smart object, but the original file is actually living in the cloud. I'm just going to drag this. I'm not going to bother holding down the Shift key to constrain this. I actually don't want that seam at the bottom. So I'm just going to zoom out, Command minus or Control minus, and I'm just going to drag that floor of that concrete texture out of view there. Okay, and then I'm going to commit that scaling. Okay, once we've got that, I'm going to apply a blend mode. This time instead of screen, we're going to use multiply. Okay, multiply is a darkening blend mode, so the white is not respected anymore, and we're basically going to darken any of the pixels on the underlying layers. It's a little bit too aggressive for me, so I'm going to lower the opacity perhaps down to a 60 or 50%, so that texture is just a little bit more subtle. Again, I'm not really happy with this brickwork here, so we might just go in with the scaling again. See, you can see my original scaling. It's a non-destructive scaling. I'm just going to zoom back out, Command minus again, and just drag that out of view and then commit. Now I'm going to do Command 0, Control 0 on a PC to fit my canvas area into the window there. Okay, I'm going to finish this off with a little bit of text and perhaps a border. So I'm just going to grab the text tool, again making sure the top layer is selected. I'm going to click and drag the text tool, okay, across that top portion of the frame. This will constrain the text into just that area. And I'm going to hit the center, so we have a centered text there. I've got Helvetica Light. Choosing a color, I decided rather than to choose a color from the color picker, I'm coming into the image area and selecting one of the browns from the woman's face there, and now selecting OK. Okay, now all I have to do is think of a title for this CD cover. So I'm going to go back to the roots. Okay. So that's starting off the text. I'm not actually keen on the lower case here, so I'm just going to pop out the little character panel here. So this will allow me perhaps just to use all caps in this composition. I will need to select all of the text before I apply that, however. Okay, so that's much better. Okay, so we can also change the kerning, tracking and kerning here. So I'll just pull that down to 50 here, and it's also slightly large, so I'm just going to scale that back perhaps to 72 points there and commit that text. Okay, with the move tool selected, I can move that into position. If I decide that it needs to be just a little bit larger again, rather than choosing a different size for the font, I'll just go in and with the free transform, Command T again, and I could scale that larger. And again, trying to keep that text central to the composition. Okay, and then I'm going to commit. Okay, so once I've got the text in place, and I'll just push that a little bit lower, I'm deciding that I really need something that will define the edge of the CD cover. So I'm going to come over to one of my borders. Okay, and now I created these borders. I tend to use them quite a lot on graphic designs. I'm just going to grab the ESP border 1 into that frame. Now it's a horizontal border, so I'm just going to swing that round into a vertical, so the interesting design at the bottom is at the base of the image there. Again, I'm going to need to zoom out so I can see the top bounding handle. Again, Command 0 will fit on screen, but fit the bounding handles on screen. This will allow me to come in and reposition this. Again, I don't need to constrain the proportions of this design, so I'll just hit the commit icon in order to apply that border to the composition. Now, one of the magic things about the screen, as well as respecting white, it also makes black neutral or invisible. So I'll just select the screen and the screen blend mode, and that will make all of that black on that layer completely neutral, just leaving that white border edge there. Okay, and again, Command 0 to fit on screen. Okay, once you've finished this project, if you are handing it off to a client or a colleague and it's complete with all layers, you probably don't want to leave the smart objects. Okay, they are going to lead to a slightly large file size. So at this stage, you may want to rasterize the smart objects as soon as you're committed to the scale of each of these layers. So I'm just going to right click and choose rasterize layer. Okay, we could also do the same thing with the cloud files. Okay, so we're not linked to the cloud anymore. We'll rasterize the grunge concrete, and we'll also rasterize my border. Okay, so now when we scale, rather than the image staying roughly the same size, it is going to shrink in megabytes, allowing the file to be transferred quickly. Okay, so hopefully you found that project useful, that double exposure project. Thumbs up and share the information if you found it useful.